guys, good morning. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. So today's post, I'm going to be talking about something that I have received a lot of emails from readers and subscribers asking me about how I achieve a good fit on most of my hand-sewn garments. I started replying some of those, but then I actually realized that it was a really long reply because I couldn't attribute it to any one particular thing, so I decided to do a video about it. I apologize for the poor quality video. It's a really great day. I don't have great lighting, so I'm just making do with what I have. Okay, so talking about fit, that mythical, elusive concept that all of us who sew go after. So I want to start by sharing with you my fitting story. So the first time that I decided to sew something, a garment for myself, I needed to make a garment for my graduation because I couldn't actually afford to buy a really nice dress that I wanted. So I thought, why don't I make one? I bought a very cheap sewing machine from Tesco's and I bought some fabric, some red fabric, which I now know to have been crepe fabric from Bombay stores, and I bought 2 meters of fabric, and I got a sewing pattern from Bombay stores as well, and it was Vogue 8280, and I decided to make it, and it was a baptism of fire because I had to learn everything from the book that I had borrowed from the library, and it was a Reader's Digest sewing book, and I also had to use the pattern instructions to know about understitching, even though I didn't do understitching at all. And so I learned a lot making that first garment, inserting a zipper, which was my first time inserting a zipper, but it was very intense because I had 2 weeks to make this dress. But I was very, very lucky in that the size that I selected to cut on this Vogue pattern coincided just barely with my RTW size at the time. So I was a size 8 at the time, and I cut the Vogue size 8 sewing pattern. I cut into the pattern, and this was my first sewing pattern. I didn't even know about tracing. And I was very lucky in that it fit me, but it was very, very snug on me. But I was happy with that, so it made like a really form-fitting sheath dress. But I walked away from that experience believing that RTW sizes and sewing sizes were the same. So about a few years later, when I decided to take up sewing again, I found a vintage sewing pattern in Oxfam, which I bought for 29p, and it was a size 8 sewing pattern, and I thought, oh, fantastic, and it was a 70s style skirt. So I got home, I had some lovely fabric that I had picked up from Car Booty that I cut into, and I made up the skirt. I didn't even try it on at all. Finished it, did the waistband, and put up the zip, and then I tried to put the skirt on. Could I get it past my hips? I could not get it past my hips, and it was, even after I had to rip out the back seam where the zipper was so that I could try and get it, wiggle into it and get it past my hips, I couldn't even get it to close around my waist. It was completely too small for me. So that was when I thought, hang on, what's going on here? I'm a size 8 and this thing says it's a size 8. So I did a little bit of research, and I actually found out that dressmaking sizes and retail sizes are completely different. And I thought, oh, okay, so you have to measure yourself and things like that. So that's where I started from. So thinking about it, I started looking at how did I go from that to being able to fit my clothes now without too much trouble. And I came up with 7 things. It all condensed down to 7 things. So this is my video on 7 ways to achieve a better fit when you're sewing your clothes. At least based on my journey. 1, I realized that I wasn't measuring myself properly. One of the first big 4 patterns after my first dress that I tried to make was a simplicity top, which I was very excited about because it had peplums, and I was crazy about peplums at the time. I measured myself because by this point I had read that you had to measure yourself, and I'd measured myself. I had measured my bust and my waist, and I went onto the back of the pattern to see what size to cut out, and it showed me that I was a size 16. And I thought, wow, wow, I'm a size 16, which I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I had no idea, but I went with it. And so I cut out this size 16 and I cut into my fabric. I made it and I got to a point where I could try it on, because that was the other thing that I learned, that I shouldn't just make it and assume it's going to fit me. When I tried it on, it was heaps too big. It was far, far too big for me, and it was gapy. And from that, I got a little bit confused because I wondered, well, why is it that I have followed the instructions and I've measured myself and I've cut out the size that I like, but it's not working? So I went back again to do some more research, because all the books that were telling me, the books were just telling me to measure myself and then take the pattern appropriately. And it was around this time that I discovered some sewing blogs, and I read about how there's this mythical thing called ease, and how you have to look at finished garment measurements. I didn't get most of it, but I tried my best to sort of like, now measuring properly is very important. And I enrolled for a pattern drafting course, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But through that pattern drafting course, I learned that I hadn't been measuring myself correctly, and that was quite a revelation for me. So once I saw a video tutorial by a professional who works in the garment industry, showing how they would take measurements, that's when I actually learned to measure correctly, and that was a big shift. It meant that I was able to choose patterns that were closer to my actual size, which okay, so once I was able to measure properly, the next thing that I started trying to learn was this concept of finished garment measurements versus the recommended measurements that you use to select your size. So when you get a sewing pattern, it comes with two sets of measurements on it. So at the back of the sewing pattern, it will show you that if your bust measures 34 inches and your waist measures 28 inches, for example, then you should be cutting out the size 14 or the size 16. And then you also get a second set of measurements. Normally you find those on the actual pattern sheet that's inside the envelope, and that will show you what the finished garment measurement is for the bust and for the waist, and that's your measurement without the seam allowances. And once I started, if I found a pattern that showed me what the finished garment measurements were, it helped me to select a pattern that was closer to the actual fit that I wanted for myself. So they always tended to be a mismatch. So if I used the pattern envelope, it might tell me to cut a size 14 or a size 16. But if I looked at the finished garment measurements, it would tell me, if for the fit that I wanted, I'd have to cut something like a size 10 or a size 12 instead. So that certainly helped, and that helped me to start getting clothes that fitted me in the way that I wanted and that I was. So even though I could now measure myself properly and I was selecting my size based on the finished garment measurements, it still wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. It wasn't matching these visions that I had in my head when I started on a project. So the next thing I decided to embark on was enrolling in a pattern drafting class. And I used Craftsy, which I love so very much. I have 5 kids and a lot of stuff going on in my life, so I don't have as much time. I actually don't have a lot of time to go and attend classes. So I love craftsy because it is flexible. I can watch it when I want to. I also have access to the instructors because you can send in questions and they respond to the questions, and they are really, really good. So I highly recommend Craftsy. Oh, I never buy them full price though. I always wait to pick them up on sales. Black Friday is like the best time to buy them. So that's a little tip for you there. So the pattern drafting class that I did was run by Susie Fur, and amazing instructor. I ended up buying all of the other drafting classes. She does a skirt, a bodice, a trouser, and sleeve class, and I got all of them. And I also ended up buying her book because they were really, really excellent. But what I took away from the pattern drafting class was far more than what I expected. So number one, I learned that all bodies are different. There is hardly any one standard body type, and that everybody is completely different. It's just that retailers, in order to mass produce something, they have to select what they consider to be a standard body size. And so that was such a huge shift for me because I learned to accept myself as I am and not to try and fit myself into RTW clothes. So I have broad shoulders, and I would find that most shirts would ride up when I wore them. And so I always used to feel like, why do I have these broad shoulders and all? But it's pretty normal. It turns out quite a few other people have got broad shoulders as well, and that's fine. So that was a fantastic thing that I got out of the pattern drafting um, class. It made me less insecure about, you know, my body shape. It is what it is, and that's pretty normal. Everybody just has got different body shapes. The other thing that I got from the pattern drafting class was that I got a full understanding of the architecture of patterns, how they come about, what is the rationale behind darts and seam lines and things like that. And that is really good knowledge to have, even if you don't go on and then draft your own patterns. It makes you understand sewing patterns all that much better, and it makes it easier for you to look at a pattern and understand how you would have to change it and how you can make changes that don't impact on the proportions of the designs. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but sometimes you have a pattern, a design that you really like, but when you make it up, maybe it's too small or it's too long, and so you just shorten it, but then it doesn't look right. And that's because the design has got, proportions that it has to maintain in order to still look like that. And so when you learn pattern drafting, it makes it easier for you to understand how to make adjustments while maintaining the integrity of the design and the integrity of the proportions. So that was really quite important, and that really helped a lot. And that pattern drafting, it took my fitting level from down below here all the way to up here. It definitely changed the game for me. So pattern drafting class, if you can get the crafts class, fantastic. If you have got access to colleges where you can actually go physically to a class and be taught and get to meet other people, even better. But failing which, there are a lot of free resources available online, as well as some free YouTube tutorials on pattern drafting that you could follow, or you could borrow books from the library as well on pattern drafting. I might do a separate video on pattern drafting books because I've actually accumulated a huge amount of pattern drafting books, and I sort of have some which are my favorites, some which are not so good. So yeah, pattern drafting. A point I'd like to make about the crafts classes, if you do enroll for them, is that they aren't an easy fix. They actually require a lot of time and effort. You have to be prepared to put in the work. I mean, Susie Fair is an excellent professional, in my opinion. She gives the class exactly as she would be teaching people who are training to become to work in the garment industry. So she doesn't hold anything back. She explains things in a very well thought out, easy to understand way. but you have to do the work. So it's not, what I'm trying to say is, it's not an easy one bam, thank you, ma'am, kind of thing. You have to be prepared to do the work. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's not like a, snap and it will be easy. It probably took me, and I think it took me about 3 months to like do all the skirt sloper exercises, and the body sloper was even longer because I kept on breaking in between. But it does take a lot of time. And so the other thing that improved fit on my garments, which leads on from pattern drafting, is making a toile. Making toiles or muslins or trial garments or whatever is a great way to learn how to fit a pattern that you like. Okay, so before my pattern drafting class, I did not like making toiles because I thought I was impatient, I don't have time for that, I just want to make the dress and wear it. But guess what? I was wrong. Making toiles really, really helped me to work on nailing the fit of the dress. So one pattern that I had to do a lot of toiles on was the Sewaholic Granville, because they draft for the pear shape, and my proportions aren't so much of a pear shape, but I loved the design. I love the design, and it took me 3 weekends and three toiles to nail it. And since then I have made six Granvilles and counting. But the benefit of making a toile is you do all that work to get your fit just perfect, and it's worth it, because once you've done that, anytime you make it after that, you don't have to worry about anything. So you get your fantastic fabric, you just cut into it, and you can make your item without having to worry about the fit, without having to try it on along the way, because you know it's going to fit you perfectly. And also the benefit of making a toile is you get to work through the process of sewing it, the order of construction, and if there are some new techniques that you haven't done before, you can make your mistakes during the toile stage, so that by the time you get to working on your fashion fabric, you don't have to worry about that. You've got less anxiety when you're doing that. So for example, a fly front, if you've never done a fly front before, during your toile stage, you sort of like work through your anxieties, and by the time you cut into your fashion fabric, hopefully, because you've done it once or twice before, you can just sort of breeze through it. So there are loads of benefits apart from just the fitting that you get from making a toile. So I know it's not fun, but trust me, it's worth it. And you don't have to make a toile of the whole garment, for example. So if you're doing a dress that has got a circle skirt, you just make a toile of the bodice just to see if the bodice fits you, if there are any adjustments that you need to make, that sort of thing. And if you are making a pair of trousers, you don't have to make them full length. You can just do them up to shorts length to see if it would fit you along the hip. So yeah, making a toile, I definitely recommend that as a way of improving fit. So another thing that you can do to try and improve your fit is to experiment by trying out different pattern companies. So you know how at the beginning I mentioned that in order to mass produce something, businesses have to pick what they consider to be a standard? Well, it's the same with sewing pattern companies. They use different standard body type measurements in order to draft their patterns. For example, Sewaholic is famous for drafting for what is considered to be the pear shape, and pear shape tends to have a smaller bust and a bigger hip size. So if you make, so for example, the first time I made the Granville, it was way too wide for me at the hips, and I had to take something like 2 inches each side, so a total of 4 inches. I had to remove 4 inches on the hip, because it's meant for, they draft for people with the pear shape. So each pattern company drafts for a different to a different standard body type. And if you are lucky enough, you might actually find a pattern company that uses standard measurements that you actually fit squarely into. In my case, it was Grainline Studios. I love Grainline Studio patterns because I know I actually don't need to make a 12 with them, because they're size 2 measurements perfectly my bust, my waist, and my hip measurement. So I love that. And that's wonderful when that happens. And also, most of the birder patterns, they fit me pretty much perfectly with hardly any changes. So I'm quite confident enough to cut straight into my fashion fabric because I know that they pretty much draft for my sizes. So try out different pattern companies because you will find your own tribe that kind of feels like they have designed them specially for you, which is quite nice. Okay? So another thing that you can also do is to research the pattern before you make it, and this is where resources like patternreview.com come in handy, because you go on there and you can see what other people have made, how other people have gotten on with this particular pattern that you're interested in. Now, the thing with pattern review or blogs that are also writing about the same pattern is it can be a bit of a double-edged sword as far as I'm concerned. So you can see something that looks absolutely fabulous on somebody, and sometimes you then fixate, well, I know I certainly do, fixate on wanting to make something that looks exactly like that. And then if I read the process that they have gone through, I might actually get scared off when I see how many adjustments they have had to make. So when you read these reviews, or when you read somebody else's blog post about how they got on with the pattern, I think that shouldn't put you off if you are interested in a pattern. I think it should just make you more aware of things that you might want to watch out for. But just because, blogger A had to make X number of changes, it doesn't follow for you. And so, yeah, so I wouldn't let that put you off, but you can just use it as a, as a reminder. And certainly, sometimes though, there are some patterns that have just been so poorly drafted that it does help. And if you read the first review about a pattern, and the blogger is like completely slating that pattern, I would try and find a second, third, fourth review even to just see. And in most cases, I think the sewing community is a lovely, incredibly supportive community, and it's very positive. And I think a lot of people in the sewing community wouldn't say something negative or nasty about something unless if it really is. I mean, so sometimes if like a pattern is getting like a lot of really bad reviews about drafting and things like that, I think that sometimes that would be something to pay attention to. But generally, if somebody is able to make adjustments to make a pattern suit them without any major structural changes, then it's worth giving it a try. That was a bit of a ramble, I think. But anyway, so that, which brings me to another point as well about this whole fitting journey thing. So when you read blogs and bloggers, I know certainly when I started reading blogs, I got carried away with, oh my gosh, they make these amazing garments. I want to make those garments. And I remember I would see Una Baluna, whose blog I absolutely love, and it was one of the first blogs I started reading and started commenting on. And she would make these fantastic dresses, and I'd be like, I want those dresses, I want those dresses. And I'd buy the pattern straight away, and I'd try to buy a similar fabric, and then I would make it and it looked rubbish on me. Why? Because I was comparing my beginning to Una's 8th year in sewing. So I think that's something to remember when reading other people's blogs, which is that, you know, if you're just starting out and somebody else has been sewing for 5 years, they are going to be churning out beautifully sewn garments, but you're still learning. But here's the good news about sewing: you can get there. It's a skill just like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the point is to just keep learning, keep moving forward, and don't let disappointment stop you. I think I've been to a couple of sewing blogger meetups where there have been people who sew and don't necessarily have blogs and all. And one thing I have found in common with all of us is that we are too hard on ourselves. So I remember walking up to somebody and being like, "Oh my gosh, that is an amazing Moneta dress. I love this dress. It is so cute." And and then she goes like, "Oh, I totally messed up the collar here. It's not meeting perfectly." And then I had to look and I was like, "Oh yeah, you didn't do that." But I wouldn't have noticed it unless she pointed it out. And I also do that same thing where if somebody says to me, "Oh, that's a great thing," I'll be like, "Yeah, but the shoulder seam is a bit off, the arms eye." No, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. I think we are too hard on ourselves, so we shouldn't let the disappointments kind of get in the way of trying to improve fit, certainly. You have to celebrate the success that you make. So if you did an FBA and a sway back adjustment, but you nailed the FBA, but the sway back, there's still some puddling, doesn't matter. What matters is you nailed your FBA, so which means that the next time you do that again, you won't have as much anxiety. You will know exactly how to do it, so you can move on to the next thing. So, just celebrate the successes, however small they are, even if it means that you managed to do your neckline without any gaping. That's good. If you managed to simply raise your arm's eye so that it fits around your armhole much better, that's good. So eventually these tiny little improvements, they all add up. I mean, if you think about it, if you improve even only just 1% a garment and you make one garment a week, that's like a 52% improvement by the end of the year. That's huge. So, just focus even just on small, eventually it all builds up and it adds up. That's been my experience of how I have got to the point that I am now with regards to fitting, and I hope that you've enjoyed the video and that it wasn't too long and too rambling. I would really love to hear if there are any other things that you would recommend with regards to fitting, because my sewing journey is not complete and I am totally enjoying the journey. I don't think I am done with learning how to fit. I think that there is still a lot to learn out. I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and please subscribe for new videos every Tuesday. Bye.